Herr Dr. Pflüger, Staatssekretär AD, Sie können sehen, Geschäftsführer Pflüger International und Geschäftsführer von Clean Energy Forum GmbH. Ich möchte die Gelegenheit nutzen, doch ein paar kleine Worte zu ihm zu sagen, die hier nicht stehen. Ich habe ihn zwischenzeitlich intensiv kennengelernt und er ist ein absoluter Spezialist zum Thema Energie, lange Jahre in der Politik tätig. Er ist ein wandelndes Netzwerk, ich darf das einfach mal so sagen, der nicht nur das Gras wachsen hört, sondern der auch Meinungen mit seinem Handeln beeinflusst und mit seinem Tun, was er insgesamt in dieser Branche macht. Er hat ein extremes Fachwissen und jetzt höre ich auf. Herr Dr. Pflüger, the floor is yours.
Dankeschön. Well, let me start. What I would like to try is to talk briefly about the world, then to Europe and Germany, and at the end, a few words to where we stand with mobility in Europe and Germany. But everything is connected. Well, we had an international order based on rules, on international law. That lasted pretty long, and it grew after the war. After World War II, everyone embarked into a United Nations coined system of international law. And in the last years, we have seen developments, of course, the war in Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, we have sanctions, tariffs, struggles, conflicts wherever we look. And we see that this Western world, which dominated everything, the financial institutions, the cultural perceptions, democracy, all that what was predominant in the world is now challenged. We have BRICS Plus, that is the organization of Brazil, Russia, we have South Africa in that, we have a lot of BRICS Plus countries who joined, Iran, Iraq. We have this Shanghai Organization Council that met just a few days ago, where Putin, Xi, the Indian Prime Minister went to, and where a new force in world policy was created. So they are, of course, not united in any case, but they are united in one idea: to escape the dominance of a Western and US-led world. And that is new. There is a counterweight now, challenging the dollar, challenging our financial institutions, challenging everything that we have lived with since World War II. And that is a different situation, and that of course has repercussions to everything what concerns climate. Because this climate rule, this governance of climate issues had its origin, or it was, as a matter of fact, it was already a peak in Paris, the Paris Agreement, climate agreement of 2015. It was a peak of a long-term movement, but it was at the same time almost the end. Then came the conflicts with Russia, then came Mr. Trump, who then left the Paris Agreement. So this very climate rule that has been established worldwide, and where everybody expected for quite some time that would last, that is in the process of vanishing away. US has gone out of that. Russia is deeply involved into a war. Many other countries like India and China, they say, well, we comply with Paris, but only in 2060, 70, and so on. Until then, we have the right to use fossil fuels as much as you in the Western world did for decades. One can say that most countries in the world, not the Europeans so far, are leaving this rule of Paris. And if we look to the mere facts, we see that the world still is dominated by fossil fuels. In spite of all the rhetoric, leave them in the ground, all the warnings concerning climate change, which I share, we see that there is a development where we still have 80% fossil fuels. Renewables have grown dramatically. They are the strongest growing energy source, but also coal, also gas, and also oil are growing in this world. The world has an enormous energy hunger, and therefore a great guy, Daniel Yergin, he's some sort of, well, the leading analyst for energy affairs in the world, Dan Yergin from Washington, D.C., he said, we are not living in a world of energy transition, but in a world of energy addition. The wind and solar and the renewables have been added to the fossil fuels, and they have not, as was expected, replaced them. Also die erneuerbaren Energien sind gewachsen, aber sie stellen im Ganzen gegenüber der ebenfalls wachsenden Kohle, Gas und Ölproduktion und Consumption, stellen sie keine Ersetzung der Fossilen dar, sondern sie sind eine Ergänzung. Und die Welt ist nach wie vor 80% fossil. Übrigens auch die EU und fast auch Deutschland. Wir sind vielleicht bei 75. Aber auch hier, trotz gewaltiger Investitionen in die Erneuerbaren, in spite of enormous subsidies for renewables, also in Europe and Germany, the core is still fossil, and there is no general change. When we look at Energiewende, transition, I think it is important, it is necessary, given climate change, which is really existing and which is a danger for the world. My main criticism to the Energiewende, as it has happened now, is what I would call overambition. I have learned in my own personal life, when I had great aims, it could mobilize forces, it could mobilize yourself. If you had too high aims, it led very fastly to panic, to fear, to wrong moves, and that was never healthy. Always when I was overambitious, I failed. I don't know if you have similar experiences. Ambition is good, overambition is counterproductive. And I believe that to say, especially as Germans, well, the EU says in 2050 we want to be climate neutral. The Germans, we want to be a little bit better. We say 2045. I believe that's a mistake, especially because the last 20% to reach climate neutrality, or always the last 20% in reaching a goal, is always the most difficult and most probably the most expensive. So overambition is my main criticism to Energiewende. Now, I believe that this has been understood, more or less, in Europe. We have a sort of, I would call it a shift of paradigm. We have a change of the main driving forces. It was Mr. Timmermans, the energy commissioner. Mr. Timmermans from the Netherlands, he was what I call a green ideologue. He is the father of the Green Deal of the European Union. And then they understood it doesn't work. It doesn't help the climate, but it helps deindustrialization. We made progress not in fighting climate change, but we made progress in Europe and especially in Germany in deindustrializing our continent. And that they have understood this. And therefore they created now the Clean Energy Industrial Act. The Clean Industrial Act. So from the Green Deal to the clean, not anymore green, to the Clean Energy Industrial Act is only 2 years, but it's an enormous change of paradigm that we have seen. From Mr. Timmermans to Mr. Draghi. I don't know if you heard Mr. Draghi, the famous Italian politician. He just said a few days ago, the decision of the EU concerning the combustion engine, phasing out the combustion engine by 2035, was a grave mistake. So there is a beginning of change in the thinking of the Commission, and definitely in the German political scene. If you see Mrs. Reiche's monitoring report last week, you can definitely see a change of importance in the main areas. Cost efficiency, security of supply, acceptability, affordability of energy, energy prices, resilience of a system. Those are the key words now, and not only. Climate still is a key word, but not only is everything, not anymore is everything dominated by climate issues. That's the change. She doesn't give up renewables. She doesn't give up the fight against climate change, but she says it has to go hand in hand with competitiveness, with supply security, and with cost efficiency. And I believe that is exactly the right thing. Nevertheless, it will take time in Brussels and in Germany to turn around the steer. Because it's a huge tanker, the EU and Germany. And they all have been looking for the last decade for getting all electric, doing all electric. That was the main focus of the climate movement. Heating sector, mobility, definitely also the energy production sector, and also even the energy intensive industries. They had in mind to electrify everything, or let's say almost everything. And only for a very few, like steel or cement, they said, well, here we can look for a certain time for other solutions. And that has completely changed. All electric is dead. It is really dead. It still plays an important role. Electric is important. The heating pump will stay. E-mobility, especially in the traffic of private automotive, will stay and will play a decisive and probably a dominating role. But if you look to the coalition agreement, and if you look to what Mrs. Reiche said just the other day, we see that she and the German government clearly acknowledges the role of climate-neutral fuels. Again, it will take time until this will go through to the bureaucracies, especially in Brussels. They have so-called delegated acts. They are not done by politicians, but by the bureaucracies. They have about 1,000 of that, which still have to be discussed. And they go by and large without big control by parliamentarians. And here we have a terrible amount of bureaucracy, of regulations. And until this new paradigm really has going down to the normal functionary in the bureaucracy, it takes some time. They have been educated exactly in the other way. But it happens. It happens every day that there is a change. Mrs. Reiche said in this monitoring, biomethane is recognized as an important instrument to decarbonize. And I'm also the chairman of the supervisory committee of an association called the Gas and Hydrogen Economy in Germany. That's 135 companies along the value chain of gas and hydrogen. And well, it was absolutely already our wish 2, 3, 4 years ago to bring more biomethane to Germany. We told the Ampel government, bring more biomethane. Make, for instance, a contract with Ukraine, who were begging us to bring their biomethane into the gas grid and create a business model. And I told them, you should not only bring weapons to Ukraine, but business to Ukraine. And to develop the biomethane market in Ukraine could be a fantastic idea, and we would all profit from that. Nothing happened. Why? Because there were too many ideologues who said, well, if we bring biomethane, it will keep also natural gas in the system. We might bring it into the gas grid, but with that we will prolong the legitimacy of gas. And they wanted all electric. So that mere ideological move has nothing to do with CO2 reductions. It's just that they said, we want to electrify, we want to have renewables. We do not like the greening of molecules because that makes molecules overall legitimate. That was responsible for losing a lot of time. But that is ended now. That has ended. Also, the EU has now in the so-called Repower EU Act, they want to phase out Russian gas, and they say as one of the main alternatives is the EU. For the EU is the production of biomethane. They want to produce just in the EU countries 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane until 2030. That's the aim of the EU. And so you can see also here is a new world has started. And it's quite a dramatic shift. Everyone says politics is moving so slowly. In 2022, it was still all electric. We had a guy in the ministry called Patrick Reichen. He was the main ideologue for all electric, and now it's 3 years later, and we see all electric is a slogan from the past. So today I think it is a consensus, even shared by many Greens, that without the greening of molecules you cannot make a successful Energiewende. Ohne die grünen Moleküle kann man keine Energiewende hinkriegen. Weil unser Energiesystem besteht zu 80% aus Molekülen, zu 20% aus Elektronen. Und ehe man alles elektrisiert hat, ist die Welt 10-mal untergegangen. Also müssen die Moleküle grüner werden. And I'm optimistic, not only optimistic, I'm convinced that this is understood. Well, coming to mobility sector, you are of course much more experts than I am, but this of course has repercussions to the mobility sector. So this e-mobility hype, it has already vanished in the last years. It will continue to vanish. Not that I want to fight e-mobility, but the aims were overambitious concerning Ladesäulen, concerning the amount of cars. They talked of 15 million until the end of the decade. Now it will be, well, between 8 and 10 million. The consumers still don't like it very much. They are still too expensive. And there are limits to the mere ability of a system, of a power system, to have enough electrons for heating pumps, for electrifying the industry, and for electrifying the whole mobility sector. If we continue that part, or if this path would have been continued, just E, the grid would have collapsed sooner or later. And I think that also this message has been understood. And therefore, many people, and I belong to them, advocate that we should measure in the future the climate neutrality factor of a vehicle, not tank to wheel, but that we should take the whole life cycle of an automobile into our mind. That is much more just, because under today's tank to wheel system, a car which would have, of course, no CO2 coming out of the Auspuff, would be labeled completely climate neutral, even if the electricity which it uses would come from 100% of coal production. So that's crazy. Absolutely important is what is the energy mix in the system, where you get your car from, where you load your car from. What is important is the amount of copper. Where does this copper comes from? Where is the battery produced? Under which costs? How can you resell that vehicle? How can you recycle that vehicle? And here, if you take the whole life cycle, I think you come to much different ideas. I had yesterday in my office a delegation from Salzgitter AG, you know, the front runner in green steel. And they told me about their difficulties. They said, we do not get green hydrogen, and if we get it to prices that are incredible, we will delay this process. They were also overambitious. I told them, you were overambitious. The aim is right, but the timetable is crazy. But then they came up and said, well, we should change the analysis of cars' climate neutrality, because in the moment we get away from tank to wheel assessment to life cycle assessment, suddenly we would have a lead market for green steel, because then they could say, well, of course you have still a combustion engine, you might be not 100% climate neutral, but therefore you have a steel in this car which is produced with green molecules. So suddenly there is a new supporter of this, and that is at least a part of the steel industry. Well, last point is this whole idea of having not only electricity but also climate neutral fuels in our traffic, that needs a level playing field. And therefore it is now on Mrs. Reiche to find a system and to create a regulation which does not discriminate, for instance, when it comes to the toll for Lastkraftwagen, for the big engines, that this is discriminated in comparison to electric vehicles. And also this will happen, because that's the only way to create this in the longer distance, and to realize and to put into reality what has been said in Brussels and in Berlin over the last 2 years. So my personal assessment is we will see both systems near each other, but there will not be a dominance of e-mobility, definitely not when it comes to the to the big engines in our traffic. Thank you so much. I hope that this little tour d'horizon was a good start for your conference, and I wish you all well.